Now, the first report format we will discuss is a basic timeline report. These are generally done for surveillance cases, site visits, recon reports, and other reports that have multiple time frames when things have occurred. The first thing to remember for all of your report formatting is consistency. Use the same font throughout your report and make sure this is a highly easy to read font. Do not get fancy and put in script or Gothic or other fancy fonts in your report. Remember, your audience is not just your client. Your audience may include opposing counsel, judge, and jury. Make sure it looks professional. For me, Calibri or Times New Roman are my go-to fonts. Other fonts that you might consider using are Helvetica, Cambria, and Arial. Now, no matter what font you use, stick to it throughout your report. In fact, I would suggest that you stick to it for all of your reports to ensure that your clients see consistency in all of your work product. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. At the top of my timeline report, below my header information, I have the subject section. It looks something like this. It'll have the subject, their name, and usually a photo of the subject. Next, I always have a summary section. This is great for surveillance videos where you can tell the reader in a quick summary the good details of what they will find in the actual timeline details. It also tells them when there is probably not much of interest for them. If you're working a workers' comp case and never saw the subject, it is good for them to know that before they go scrolling through your entire timeline report and reading all the entries and then finding out. Now, a typical summary might look something like this. Summary: throughout the surveillance, the subject was confirmed to be present at his residence. However, he was never observed outside of his residence. Now, this short summary tells the client all that they really need to know, and they can move on to other tasks without having to go through the whole report. A more detailed summary might look something like this one. Summary: throughout surveillance, the subject was observed and captured on video on multiple occasions, walking, standing, opening and closing doors, entering and exiting a vehicle, and driving. He was followed to a grocery store, a convenience store, and to a McDonald's. This tells your client, hey, there's some potentially good stuff that you need to know about, so read on and watch the video. After the summary is the actual timeline entries. This is a good way to start the timeline. Thursday, February 30th, 2020. Investigator, John Morris. Now notice the bold fonts. Now you can format it to your liking, but whatever you do, whatever you make bold, make it consistent through your report. The time entries then go next for that day. 6 a.m. The investigator arrived at the provided residence for the claimant, 123 Main Street, Anytown, Colorado. Upon arrival, the investigator observed a white Chevrolet pickup parked in the driveway with Colorado license plate 123 ABC and a tan Ford parked on the street directly in front of the residence with Colorado license plate ABC 123. Both of these vehicles are registered to the claimant at this address. The resident could best be described as a single-story ranch-style residential structure with tan vinyl siding and a two-car attached garage. No interior lights were observed on, and the garage door was closed. The investigator established surveillance. Now let's break this down. 6 a.m. is the time. Notice it is bold. Do it as you wish. Most people bold the timestamps so that they stand out. Next is the investigator. Do you write in the first person or the third person? Well, which came first, the chicken or the egg? It really doesn't matter as long as you're comfortable writing that way and talking that way and you stay consistent throughout your reports. Myself, I write everything third person. I'm most comfortable with that, and I have to write a lot of reports where I am not the on-scene investigator, so it just makes a whole lot more sense when I'm writing those reports. Now notice the word claimant. Again, whatever works for you, claimant, subject, injured worker, whatever, just stay consistent. Now some of your clients will require you to use certain verbiage. Most of my cases that involve workers' comp and injury claims, the client wants me to use the word claimant. I've had one that refers to them as the injured worker or IW. If it's a domestic case, you may refer to the subject as, well, the subject once the subject has been identified, of course, in the report. Next, you see where I identified the vehicles present. This is important as it really paints a picture. Even though you have video, some people just understand words with pictures better. I also then describe the residence and some other details of what I saw or did not see, again, for a better understanding for the reader as to what it looks like. Usually I will put a picture off to the side or down below the entry from my video with a date and a time stamp on it, of course, of the resident. Now, I only describe the resident one time in my report on the first entry. If I work at 3 days, I don't put the description of the residence in every day, but I do put my observations in for every day as they may change from day to day. Remember, consistency. If you say what vehicles are present on day one, and if there were lights on and the garage door is open or closed, do it for every day. Now, your next time entry may be dependent on your client's requirements. I have some clients who require us to have hourly entries a lot like this. 7 a.m., no activity observed. 8 a.m., no activity observed. When activity is observed, you can enter it like this. 9 a.m., the claimant was observed at the front door of his residence. He then exited his residence, walked to the van parked on the street, entered the van, and exited the neighborhood. Video. The investigator initiated mobile surveillance. Now the time is bold again, and PM is capitalized, keeping everything uniform. The first sentence is normal font. This was an observation. The second sentence is bold. And note at the end, there's the word video in bold and all caps. This tells the reader that wherever they find that word video in those bold letters, that we're talking about video. So then if they want, they can just scan through the report and they can find those video sections really quick. I also usually put a photo of the activity next to this type of line or right below it. Again, so the reader has a visual. The next lines might be something like this. 9:15 a.m. The claimant was followed to a nearby McDonald's. He was then captured on video as he drove through the drive-up and placed an order, drove up to the window, paid the attendant, placed a bag and a drink cup into his car, and exited the parking lot. 9:30 a.m. The claimant was followed as he drove back to his residence. Upon arrival at his residence, the claimant was captured on video as he exited his vehicle, walked towards his residence, and entered the residence. At the end of the day, the line would look something like this. 2 p.m., having no further observations of the claimant, the investigator terminated surveillance for the day. Then at the end of the report, I usually have another quick recap, something like this. Conclusion. Throughout the surveillance, over 32 minutes of video was obtained of the claimant and over 24 hours of investigative time was utilized. The claimant was followed successfully to a location where we believe he may currently be employed at XYZ Company. This concludes this investigation. Please let us know if there is anything further that we can assist you with. Next, let's look at what I refer to as a summary report. While I call it a summary report, it does have more detail than just a summary. It also has a summary. It, however, has just the information deemed necessary for the client to see. For instance, if we work a domestic surveillance case, we will usually use a summary report like this instead of the timeline report. Again, keep everything consistent throughout the report. We still start with the header information up on top, and we still have a subject as well as summary section after the header. Next is a quick synopsis of the investigation details that looks something like this. 5 p.m., the investigator arrived at the provided residence for the subject, 123 Main Street, Anytown, Colorado. Upon arrival, the investigator observed the subject's registered vehicle parked on the driveway. 7:15 p.m., the subject was observed and captured on video as she entered her vehicle and exited the neighborhood. 7:45 p.m., the subject was followed to Mr. Smith's residence located at 321 Smith Road, Anytown, Colorado, where she was captured on video as she entered the residence. 8 p.m., the subject, along with Mr. Smith, were captured on video as they exited the residence, walked hand in hand towards the subject's vehicle, and entered the vehicle. With Mr. Smith as the driver, they exited the neighborhood. 8:15 p.m., the subject and Mr. Smith were followed to La Restaurante located at 345 Main Street, this town, Colorado. While at this establishment, the subject and Mr. Smith were captured on video, sitting next to each other at a table, eating, drinking wine, and showing signs of affection toward each other. 9:15 p.m., after leaving the restaurant, the subject and Mr. Smith were followed back to Mr. Smith's residence, where they were captured on video as they entered the residence. 10 p.m., all of the residence interior lights were observed being turned off. 12 a.m., no further observations of the subject. surveillance was terminated. Now, this only has timelines for moments of activity. Alongside of each one of those, or underneath each one of those, I would normally place a photo from my video as well. Now, you can make this even simpler. Many times, I might just have a paragraph for a one-day surveillance like this. Investigation details. On Monday, February 30, 2020, you requested that we conduct a surveillance investigation on your wife, herein referred to as the subject, to see if she was in a relationship with Mr. Smith, who resides at 432 Smith Road, Anytown, Colorado. On Friday, March 1st, 2020, we conducted covert surveillance on the subject. During surveillance, she was followed to Mr. Smith's residence, then to a restaurant with Mr. Smith, then back to his residence where she remained throughout the evening. Throughout the surveillance, the subject and Mr. Smith did appear affectionate towards each other on multiple occasions. Then below this, I would place multiple photos, with date timestamp on them, of course, from my surveillance video. A short report many times is much preferred, as it gets to the point, and it doesn't mean that your client has to spend a lot of financial resources to get a long report written. Hey, thanks for watching the PI Guide, tips, tricks, and advice for professional private investigators. Now hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell so you will get notifications for upcoming videos.